Beck Phillips on the Iron Mindset podcast. Time to unravel all your secrets and figure out what you're all about. You have had other podcast appearances. You have talked a little bit about your backstory before, but naturally this is your first time on the Iron Mindset. Yeah. So take it all the way back to little Beck, if you ever were little.
No, I was built this big in the factory.
Just made this way.
Yeah.
Literally when they say built different. What got you into sports though? What got you into powerlifting?
Well, into sports. So I was just not a sport kid. I used to live like near the north of England, near Manchester. And then moved down south for my dad's work. He got a job down there. So it was like, let's just move. And then I was at school, got some friends, like one or two. One of them used to play rugby. And I don't remember this, but apparently I just pestered my mum for about 6 months being like, take me to rugby. It's going to be fun. So I just wanted to do it for fun. Went to rugby, enjoyed it. The guy that basically got me into it, he left because he then wasn't getting any game time because I showed up. And then from there, started training in the gym, got picked up by like Gloucester Academy, did gym stuff with them at like 14, 15. And the S&C coaches there were like, oh, you're really good in the gym. Like, you should maybe do this instead of rugby. And I was like, no, I want to play rugby. Then I got dropped the year after by the rugby coaches. They were like, no, you shit, fuck off. And I was like, well, the S&C coaches said I was good in the gym. So I still played rugby, like went through county setups, Southwest setups. But yeah, still was in the gym just trying to get strong. And then I met someone in my local gym who did powerlifting. And I was like, oh, what are you training for? He's like, powerlifting. I was like, what's that? He goes, squat, bench, deadlift, max out. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. So I signed up for a Southwest meet with him. Did all my squats. At the time, it was like under 18s. I didn't know, but I did like a sub-junior under 18 squat record. You wouldn't believe it now, but... and then benched. So I squatted like 220, bench 120. Then I didn't know how long it would take. This comp took fucking hours. We started in the morning. I did my opener deadlift, like 190. I was like, okay, cool. I have to go now. They're like, what? I'm like, I've got to leave. Like, why? You haven't finished? I've got a rugby game to play. So I signed up for a powerlifting comp in the morning, and then I went to play rugby in the afternoon.
How did you play in the game after competing?
I played fucking great.
Are you aware that there's this like cohort? I've had it definitely in here where so many of the guests I've had on have been like, oh, so I got into powerlifting because I used to play rugby and I just preferred the gym stuff. Have you found that in your time in powerlifting, there's like all these bastards, all these dickheads everywhere, like this fucker played rugby as well?
Yeah, so like listening to your podcast, so there was Melvin and even Alex. There's probably some others, but those are the two recent ones I've listened to. So Melvin, I heard he played a little bit for Connacht, and I played against Connacht. So I did some Irish Exiles things. That's like a club in the UK. I don't know if they still do. They do a tour to Ireland every year, play each of the provinces, and one of the provinces comes over to the UK, and we play over there. And I was like, oh, because I asked you, didn't I? I was like, when?
Yeah, there was a chance you could have played against Melvin.
Yeah, which would have been quite cool.
Pretty sick, yeah.
Yeah,
small world.
And then when I played in the Southwest, one of the guys like last year then messaged me because he saw I was coaching strongman. He's like, I want to do strongman. And I was like, well, I coach strongman. He's like, oh, cool. So again, rugby into strongman. And then I do rugby to powerlifting, Melvin powerlifting, Alex powerlifting.
So do you think then potentially there's that like want for like maybe the physicality of it that people all kind of share? Like, have you found a trait among people? Like, I know from talking to the people, obviously they're all very nice people as well, but generally it's like they like putting themselves through that degree of voluntary hardship. Well, I like going and training really hard because XYZ, or I like competing and running into other gigantic men and fucking myself up because what else are you going to do on a Saturday? What is it, do you think, like kind of unifies all these people to do these things?
For rugby, I don't think people do powerlifting for the same reasons they play rugby. I think they do powerlifting because it's a gym-based sport, and gym is usually like second in rugby. Like everyone who plays rugby goes to the gym. And yeah, it sounds like the other lads enjoyed the gym more than they enjoyed rugby. I enjoyed them pretty equally. I enjoyed running in hurting people, hurting myself, getting really fucking tired, like putting that effort in. And the way that, I guess the way you train for rugby is very much like pretty much going close to failure in some capacity. You play a game, you're not going to be like, I'll just go 80% today. Like some people will do a soft meet. I'll just do RP8 today. You don't really do that in rugby, well, personally.
Do you think there's lessons then you could take from, let's say you're a powerlifting coach who maybe didn't have the exposure to rugby? Do you think there's elements of that people could take from the rugby training that probably would have decent crossover, or even vice versa?
Yeah, I would say I trained maybe too hard, too often, too long in rugby, and I've only learned recently because I used to then transfer that to powerlifting. Did all right. But again, too much, too hard, too much volume, too much intensity. Injuries pop up. Like rugby players get injured not just from like collisions, but overuse injuries and things. Whereas now I train a lot less, a lot easier, and I'm progressing. And potentially that would happen in rugby. Maybe if you like pulled back a little bit or only did what was necessary, which you do see at the top level. But like grassroots, everyone's like, go as hard as you can all the time.
We're just running headlong into each other.
Yeah.
So talk me through it then. So you had this like turning point where you had like a rugby match and a meet in the same day. When did it start to become more, I'm competing in powerlifting, this is the thing I'm going to do?
Because my aspiration's always been to compete internationally in a sport. So I've also done athletics, so shot put and discus. I went through the school system with that, so I went to like English school champs. I was on like reserve lists for internationals, and that never happened. I tried twice to do international for rugby, and then like I started powerlifting. I'm like, I'm going to go international for this, but I'm going to try to, and then I have, which was great. You were there. It was lovely.
That's right. We did. We went Western Euros not long ago. Yeah. So you did actually fulfill that dream. You got to wear the Era singlet. Recently enough, we both competed in Iceland in the under 93 kilo class, and you did really, really well. So, and we'll compete again tomorrow, incidentally. By the time this goes out, that will have happened. You know, we'll have both taken a good crack at Matthew Henry. But tell me then, so you've achieved that goal anyway. You've worked your way up through the ranks. You represented Ireland. And I assume the goal then will be to do that again on bigger and bigger stages, whether it's European Championships, IPF Worlds, or whatever it might be. Assume that's the long-term goal.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of doing worse like the next year. So this year I've done Western Euros. I would like to at least go to Western Euros again next year. And that's like entirely on me to perform well enough to be selected. In rugby, I wasn't a huge fan of the selection methods, because it wasn't always on talent, and I think it's quite clear. And there have been many people message me last time I spoke about this, agreeing with me that like the politics in rugby selection I think that put them off rugby, or it can do. Like being selected because your dad paid for the kit or your mum slept with the coach. Like
whatever it takes to get to the top, baby.
Exactly. That was like nothing that the athlete did.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why are you picking them? Like that person shit. Please take me or someone better than me.
That's really funny though. That's so fucking funny. Like at least we know the folks are like totally dialed into their kid getting ahead, you know?
It's like, oh, you need me to sleep with him? Well, I guess I will.
Now, so tell me then, right? So now look, naturally there's going to be politics in all sports, right? But powerlifting it's much more objective. It's weight on the bar. Did you lift more than the other people? Are you one of the top ranked people in your weight class? So that's one of the cool things about it. And it's how we can score athletes in weight class and total based competitions like we have in the IrishPF. But as I'm sure most people listening will recognize from your accent, you don't live here. You live across in the UK. What made you choose to come lift over here versus domestically where you live?
So at the very beginning, when I was younger, it's because the Irish kit in every single sport looks far better than the British kit or the English kit. White rugby shirts versus green ones. I know which one I'd rather wear. The singlets, it was like fucking blue, white and red. Well, green and white. And at the moment now it's pretty just green. Much more aesthetic. So that was the initial motivation. And then since I've actually come over here more, met more of the people, come to more of the comps. So I had spot and loaded in 2020 or 2019 at Nationals, IrishPF Nationals, and just experiencing that in old abs, like the difference in competition. Like in the UK, it's very IPF, very stale. Only the crowd clapping for their friend or their family, nobody else. Over here in Ireland, you get like random people watching you. You get the crowd generally cheers. The MC's excited not just for you, but like gets the crowd involved. The only good MC that I'm aware of in the UK is Dylan Nelson. I don't know if you know who that is.
I know the name, yeah. I think I've probably seen him on a couple of people's videos.
Yeah, so he's the calls himself Spew Shady now, because he went to, I think it was Worlds, and threw up on his way to getting like the squat world record. So
did he still get it?
I'm pretty sure he did.
What a chat. Fair play to him.
Absolute legend.
Well, so just you made that choice though. So obviously you have different motivations for it, but I know we've talked, and there's like big differences in the culture, the way the training's done, the way the competitions are run, the vibes, as the younger people might say. It's a little bit different here, and this was kind of more to your liking.
Yeah, I much preferred this. So even the one session, well, I've done 2 sessions now, but the one session I did in abs for the training day, Western Euros, like it wasn't like, oh, he's the weird British guy. He's like, oh, come and train in this rack. We're all squatting. Are you squatting? Cool. Yeah. What do you want on the bar? Everyone's helping each other. And that's just not in the UK. But like, I'm here for it. It's more collaborative, because I like the team aspect of rugby. Like that's something people ask if I miss rugby. I don't miss feeling like I got hit by a bus on Sunday. But I do miss, like, there's a team element. You're putting work in for your friends. It's not all the pressure's on you. People are putting work in for you. Like it's mutual respect, and then you come to powerlifting in the UK, and it's like individual sport. Even the athletics, which is viewed even more as an individual sport, like throwing. You'd have throwing teams, like you join a club, you've got a team of throwers, all different abilities. It doesn't matter, because you're all just spinning around in a circle, throwing something out the front. And then suddenly it's powerlifting. It's like, well, I'm the only one on the platform, so I'm the only one training in this rack. It's like,
yeah, the reason I want to ask this is because many of the people listening will be primarily aware of how things are done in Irish powerlifting. So everything's very club-based. It's there's a good amount of cooperation, coordination between the clubs. Everyone generally has training partners, teammates. People come to competitions wearing their club kit. Whereas I've learned, not just from yourself, but even people in other parts of Europe, the club culture doesn't really exist in a lot of other places where powerlifting is popular. It's very much individual athletes that might all train in a powerlifting club, like a gym that has powerlifting kit, but everyone's training by themselves in their own rack. I mentioned to you, I saw this recently enough. We had a couple of visitors over for the weekend of Ab Series 15, and a couple of the guys were in from the UK. They all came in together, all with their coach or as part of the same coaching team. 2 lads set up on 2 different benches lifting the same weight. Rather than work together, which I don't think there was necessarily, there's nothing negative about it as such, but it's so counter to how we would do things. Like you and I trained together yesterday, and we were doing essentially the same thing, so we just worked together. It just makes sense to me. So that piece, I think, is something interesting to discuss, because many people here aren't aware of it. They're not aware because they're just used to being in an environment where they do train with other people. The only time I've ever seen it still domestically in Ireland is if we have powerlifters that are maybe coming from a commercial gym into their first meet, who kind of don't really know, because they are used to, like in a Flyfit or a Bendon or the big commercial gym chains we have here. They would probably be trained by themselves in a squat rack with their headphones on. But when they do join a powerlifting club, whether it's abs, a city gym or whatever, they end up making a lot of, like, it's very uncommon, it's very common nowadays. I see people recording their top sets in a powerlifting club. They don't have headphones in. You hear other people shouting for them. They usually have people spotting them, whereas you don't really see the same thing in commercial gyms here. And it's like that, it seems to be elsewhere all around. Look, we talked about, you pulled very impressively, what was it, on the deadlift for a double, 300, 305?
Yeah, I did 300 for a double in, I would probably say, well, it's definitely a powerlifting gym. It's like changing its brand now to accommodate more athletes, the more functional fitness. They recently got High Rocks affiliated. So they're branching out. But before that, it was pretty much powerlifting, which you would expect it to be that club atmosphere where people training together. And it's not. It's the UK. I think I never really thought about it before, but what you were saying there with, you see it in Ireland still with the commercial gym athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's basically every gym in the UK. Like people treat it like that. So yeah, it's not that I wanted people to watch because I'm a very awkward person, but yeah, deadlifting 300 for a double, and nobody cared.
Mm.
Not that they had to. No one even turned around.
Mm.
But then my partner pointed out that I've lifted a lot less impressive things in the same gym, and I've had 4 people stop and stare, or they have been watching someone else do something a lot less impressive, and it's not like, don't look at them, look at me. It's just, I don't get why you stop sometimes and stop not other times. It's not even support either. They're just watching.
Just seeing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe those are the people that maybe know a little bit that, okay, that actually is a lot of weight this guy's about to lift. Like, that's what I mean. Even for me, that's so bizarre because obviously I train in abs powerlifting. So anytime anyone is doing like a top set and it's something big, now don't get me wrong, Jake Brennan, Dublin, 405 on the squat, everyone stops and watches that.
Yeah.
But it could be like, for example, one of our guys, Luca, competed on the weekend. He took a top single of 300 on the squat in his prep, and everyone stopped to watch to see how he got on. You know what I mean? Like, we've all seen much bigger squats, both off the platform and on the platform, but for him, that was a big squat. So everyone stopped to support. And to me, that's just the normal way of doing things. Like, I have not trained without a crew in a very long time. So
I think that's a good point to go on, is that because you have the club's atmosphere here, you guys know what's heavy for what people in your club. Whereas in that gym, because I think it's important to support people when they're going for something heavy, and it doesn't have to be objectively heavy. It has to be relatively heavy. Like if you're going for like a 300 deadlift, relatively heavy. If Jake was going for a 300 deadlift, relatively not heavy for Jake, you know?
Well, that's debatable nowadays.
Or like a 300 squat, you know?
Yeah. Much more relevant.
Yeah. Bloke's done 400. So if it's a 300, or is it done 420 now?
Jake?
Yeah.
430.
430. Can't keep up with him.
Yeah. He's an animal. His dad just does shit though.
I do want to, I'm more interested in his bearded dragons, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? When I actually just incidentally, when I had him on the first time, tried to open with the bearded dragon thing, and he immediately went into how to, like, the mother eats the decrepit babies. I was like, fuck's sake, man. I was trying to like give people a peek behind the curtain of this big monstrous squatter to like the human behind it. And it's like, and they fucking eat the babies and you feed the fucking decrepit babies to the fucking mom. I was like, great, Jake, good man. Still love him. He's still funny.
I listened to that. That was when I found out there was a bearded dragon breeder. I was like, okay, I should probably be friends with this guy.
Oh man, he's a really, really good guy. He's absolutely bananas nuts, but he does. Everyone will say it. Like, he handled one of the girls on the weekend for the series, and she was saying it. He's just a big marshmallow. Like, he's just a big softy. Everyone thinks he's so gruff from his exterior, and he is quite loud. But when you actually get talking to me, he's just a big softy. He handled me at nationals.
Yeah, I'll agree. He looks pretty scary, but then anytime I've had any interaction with him, he's just really nice.
Yeah, he'll probably be there tomorrow. Which is
a testament, I don't think just to him, but I would say Irish culture. Because if someone looked like that in the UK, he'll just be a knob and act like he's really tough, and that's just disappointing.
Well, let me ask you something, right? So you've obviously been in powerlifting a bit of time now, and around strength sports or people of big physicality or liking to either collide with other people or lift big things, right? Have you found with the difference in culture, and it might not be a 1-to-1 ratio as such, but how do you find people get on that you coach or work with or have known in the UK in powerlifting versus people over here? Because I know for me, one of the things that's kept me in the sport for a very long time is that I am surrounded by other people. Because I'm sure you experience it too. I'll occasionally have bouts of low motivation where I might not want to push as hard, or I might not want to go do like my bullshit day or like some other bits and pieces, but I'll go because I'm going to hang out with the boys or the team, or I'm going to go coach. So that kind of keeps me in it. So I'd always be curious to understand how people that are more individualistic or just train themselves, how do they stay consistent and stay with it in that environment compared to what we have here?
I do get asked by my athletes in the UK how I stay motivated, because it is very individual. It's all internal motivation. It's not always about motivation, as you know. There's just the discipline side. Like for me now, not every session's enjoyable. It's not always fun, big weight, start of a block. Like next week or week after, I'm probably going to be doing like triples and sets of 5, which the powerlifters is cardio, and it's I'm gonna be blowing out my ass. But for me, I've got to do that because I want to achieve my goals. When it's a new person starting in powerlifting and they might not have these big goals, they're just like, I want to enjoy it, see what it's like. They really have to enjoy the sport, if you can call it that. And that it's just genuinely difficult in the UK because of the culture around it. There aren't clubs like rugby. It's the way you talk about powerlifting. It's just how the rugby works over there. It's like, oh, well, I'm not really feeling training, but I'm going to go because like the lads need me. Like I'm the only person in my position, or there's only 2 of us. If one of us isn't there, like the other guy's always doing the work. So I think it's just more difficult in the UK.
That's what I'm curious about, because I think Ireland has a massive culture of field sports, which is obviously primarily team-based. And I would wonder then perhaps when the IrishPF was reformed over here in 2015 by Sean Ryan, Jay Farrant, Rob Burke and James Hanley, who I had on the podcast recently. I know you haven't gotten a chance to listen to that yet, but I'm sure you will enjoy it when you do. One of the OGs. I wonder if there was that element of like that, what's the word? That like culture already existed in sport here. And then I think as well, many of them, particularly Jay, would have been very heavily influenced by like Conjugate and Westside. And most equipped powerlifting is about training in a crew because you physically can't get into the gear without other people to help you. So I wonder if a combination of the field sport culture that we have here in Ireland would be so ingrained in our society, and how like that's like the Rugby World Cup obviously even here was massive, even though it was in France. It's heartbreaking as well, but still.
Don't.
And then Jay and the other key players being so interested in the likes of Westside, Conjugate, the team, training the group, training the crew, that element of it. I wonder if that's what's ingrained that here. Because realistically, powerlifting, raw powerlifting as we know it in Ireland right now is still probably less than 10 years old. Before that, it would have been probably primarily like the likes of GPC, if even that.
Again, I quite like that point because you were then bringing up the whole like equip lifting side, and the gym that I was talking about where I was pulling 300 for a double, which was a huge PB for me. There is a group there that do more equip lifting, like the ABPU and BPU, and there is a team that will go and train together. Like some of them just show up to help the other guys train. They don't even train themselves, and that is a preferred culture of mine. However, I don't want to be wrapping my knees and getting in a smelly squat suit.
Yeah.
And then so I would say, I'd probably rephrase it and say powerlifting in the UK, it's not all of powerlifting, because the equip side, I imagine there are guys that train together. There are teams. They find it easier for motivation. It would be the BP, or that it was GBPF, because in that you have equipped.
Yeah.
Well, the equipped scene in the UK is pretty dead. Like there's barely anyone training. It's quite a joke now where it's like most of the raw lifters could go compete raw in equipped in the BP and go to internationals. So yeah, like I said, I'd probably say the raw side's become very individual. Equipped side has to be team-based. Over here in Ireland, because they were inspired by the team-based thing, they just brought that to the raw side, which makes sense. It doesn't make sense why it's not a bit more team-based over in the UK.
Well, do you know, actually, incidentally, you mentioned about equipped lifting being like a bit dead. It's kind of the same here as well. I think it's the same in a lot of places. And I think that's because it just presents too many barriers to get into. Like it's very easy for people to buy a pair of knee sleeves and throw them on. Yeah. And there you are, you're raw lifter. You know what I mean? You don't even need those. No. Whereas like to get into equipped lifting, you need all these bells and whistles and whips and chains and rubber bands, you know, just to get into the damn things. And then you have people that have to try and get you out. But as you said, so would you agree then that it would probably be to the betterment of British powerlifting if they were to potentially adopt some of these things like we do here? Like if the clubs were to, like we run a pseudo club championship every year at nationals. So if you were to take that idea and like bring it back, not necessarily you, but if that idea could be adopted across Maybe not necessarily the entire country, but even by one federation, do you think it could see a net positive for the lifters?
I think, because I don't really like British people either.
Tell us how you really feel. Babe.
Yeah, I will. There's a lot of just clouty people like, oh, look at me doing Instagram shit. The closest thing to we have in the UK to the club lifting is universities.
Right.
And they are the worst people.
Oh, right.
In powerlifting. It's the respect thing. So in abs, you don't leave plates up against the rack. You put them back. You spot unload for your friends. You strip the bars when you're done. We were at a uni meet recently. The warm-up room was just a mess. And there's gym owners that I've spoken to who have had uni meets in, and like the toilet gets ruined. There's just shit everywhere. They don't clean up after themselves. Like bars are fully loaded in the warm-up room after squat. It's like, guys, you've got bench next. Like who do you expect to unload all those bars now? So like, it's just, maybe if someone was there teaching them some etiquette, it would be better, which could happen in like a proper club. But I don't know if the club thing would even work just with how British people are.
Okay. Do you think then it's maybe a lack of strong leadership then? So you say like there's maybe people that, because think of the university championship. So I assume these people are lifting representing their college.
Yeah.
Right? So would that be potentially a lack of leadership within that group? Like whoever there is coaching them is not educating them on how they're meant to conduct themselves in a warm-up room?
I mean, surely. I don't know from personal experience, but surely that is the only way that they can possibly get away with this behavior. Because no rational person will be like, oh yeah, I'll just leave that 220 on the bar. We'll go and do squats now, come back for bench. I'm in the second flight, so someone else can deal with that in the first flight when they're warming up. Just set it up for the next person. And even after deadlifts, bars fully loaded, everyone just started to leave. It's like, oh, who's going to clean this up? Because you guys got this out.
What was your last meet in the UK as part of the... Which federation did you lift with?
I was with the BP, British Powerlifting.
What was the last meet you did there?
The last meet I did there was Junior Nationals.
What was like the turning point for you to say, I don't want to lift in this one anymore, I'm going to go over there and lift in that one? Because essentially you're very much inconveniencing yourself to have to like get on a plane every time you want to compete.
Yeah.
But you're doing that for a reason. I want to kind of explore that a little bit. Was there a turning point? Was there a decision that made you say, not obviously the singlet's much better, but like...
Yeah, sorry, that was when I was younger. Like that was the like kind of the initial reason. But yeah, like I said, when I came over here, found about the culture, met more people, it was very inviting. Like when I had my first comp over here, apart from Adam thinking I was his sister, I had people in the warm-up room just like genuinely interested in who I was and why I was there. You go over in the UK, probably because I sounded weird, but you go over in the UK and they're just like, oh, well, you're against me. Fuck you. Like, oh, well, we could share a rack and be friends, but okay. Like we're friends. We compete against each other. Yeah. And you've invited me on your podcast. Yeah,
best of luck, but also fuck you.
Oh, absolutely. I'll make sure your class need doesn't work. Hide your painkillers.
Yeah, fuck yeah, Jesus. I'm gonna need like any amount of rubbing topical stuff just to get me through tomorrow, but fuck it, I'll still out squat you. Now listen, here's the question though.
Yeah, no.
Because many people will wonder about this. There's always these, and this is kind of like the things about the Fed that people don't think about. How does Beck Phillips come over and compete at the IrishPF to a national and international level? Like, many people don't realize you actually have your Irish passport.
Oh yeah, I am Irish.
Yes.
I may not sound it, but the paperwork says so.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it. I'm aware that you can go, the rules are over here, you can compete up to any regional event, like anything below nationals. You don't have to be Irish. If you just pay your membership, travel over, compete, it's no problem. But I wanted to go international. I knew that. So I started to get my passport in 2019. It took 2 years to go on the foreign birth register. And then I had to get my passport, which took like 6 months or something. So it was like 2.5 years. I finally got my passport. Then I can go to nationals. Then I can be selected to go to internationals.
Yeah, and just keep coming second at nationals.
Yeah. Well, it worked, didn't it?
Well, I mean, in fairness, it did. But that's because I was talking to your dad when we were across in Iceland, and he was saying like your family heritage is from back in Ireland, around Killarney, am I right? Yeah. So I wanted to make sure we said that.
Yeah, sure. That should be known. It's like I didn't just buy a passport.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work. No. So like my dad's side of the family, like my grandma, my granddad on his side, so obviously his parents.
Mm.
One was Killarney, one was Kilgarvan, and then like the rest of the family's there, like in those areas.
And you're not actually related to Adam Phillips.
No, I'm not actually related to Adam Phillips. No.
Just clearing that up for anybody that maybe had been interested. So you've come over here. What was and you've obviously talked through spotting and loading at Nationals 2020, I believe, in the old abs. I think you were on the platform. I think Ian, that's when Barry dumped the bar over his head.
Yeah, that was Barry also my first time spotting and loading, which I don't know was a great decision from the IrishPF to let this guy come and spot and load Barry.
But no one knew he was going to do that now, in fairness. Even him.
Yeah, no one knew. And then he came out for a second and we're all like, right, let's switch on a little bit. Because I knew about Barry. I'm like, he's got this. Don't have to do anything. I'll pretend. And he was like, surprise.
Yeah, nearly killed himself. I believe as well, he started to try and help you take the weights off the bar before he was.
Yeah, I think someone had to be like, no, go away.
Yeah. That's Barry though, all over. Have you ever gotten to speak to him?
Unfortunately not. That was the one and only time that I've met him.
Yeah, and that's COVID. It kind of took a lot of good powerlifters out of the game. Small fat donkey. That's his Instagram handle. He does like jiu-jitsu now. He did. Oh, cool. He rocked into abs about 4 or 5 months ago, and you could tell who's been around a while because everyone turned around and was like, "Oh my god, it's fucking Barry Pickett," And then there was all these new ones like, who the fuck is that guy? Like no one knew, But we've kind of had that. You probably have noticed this as well. Since like I'd say since like early 2022, maybe late 2021, there's been like an insurgence of new powerlifters. I think we're really coming into like a bit of a golden age, particularly here. Like you obviously have the unique viewpoint of like living in the UK and seeing the way powerlifting is run there versus seeing how things are done here, whether it's the IrishPF, whether it's the AB series or USAPL coming next year. Like, what are the differences in that, not just culturally, but even in where powerlifting is going? Do things look as good in the UK as they do here? Be as delicate as you need to be.
So, over here, I think, over in Ireland, I think we're like you're pushing for development. You're trying to get more people involved. I don't feel like they're trying to get more people involved in the UK. I think they're just focused on who they have at the top, and they're trying to just keep them there. I do not feel there is. I don't feel like from the federation there's any. Like I don't feel like they really care about anyone coming up and into it. Like they sure they run like some development comps. Maybe the regions themselves are like, we want more people in, but then like I also think they just want more money. So they're like, that's how we get more money is sell more tickets. But like near the top, they're just like, we just want these people. We like these people. I mean, they do lift the most, so like that's the benefit of powerlifting is really its objective. Did this person lift the most? Therefore, they get selected. Like you can't argue with that, really.
Unless you start to rely on the same people for years and years and years, and then they just decide to leave.
Yeah, and then you're a bit stuck, aren't you?
Yeah. It's one of the. I think one of the fun things about here is because it's still relatively formative. Like it's still, and that's what people don't get because again, they come in and everyone looks at things in the perception of the time frame they're in something really skews what they understand. So like even in the time I've been in powerlifting, so I started my first meet was 2019, right? So in that 4 years or so, I've seen like rapid development across meets. Like even if I just look at the AB series, and I use that because I'm more heavily involved in that, like I've seen rapid development in it. But then you look at the whole scale of time though that powerlifting has been in Ireland in its current form, and it hasn't really been that long. It hasn't even been 10 years. Whereas I'd imagine the UK has had a user base and a plugin base for much, much longer. Here's actually a question, something interesting to talk about, because we've talked on and off about it a little bit ourselves in the way the British IPF affiliate are handling Article 14 versus the Irish Powerlifting Federation are handling Article 14. So for anyone that's not, I'm sure most people listening know what Article 14 is, but if not, it's a rule actually believe from WADA, not necessarily from the IPF. I think the IPF enforce it. Am I right in saying that?
That's what I did think. And recently someone has asked WADA, is this your, like, do powerlifting need this to be compliant with you? And they're like, oh, no.
So it is actually the IPF that are...
Yeah, because someone's emailed WADA and asked, and WADA said no. And look at other sports, any other sport that's under WADA. Do they have these same rules? No. Rugby is under WADA. Do they have these rules? No. You can play rugby anywhere. Athletics, under WADA. Can you compete anywhere? Yes. Can you coach anywhere? Yes. Powerlifting? Apparently not. I only found this out recently.
That's very interesting. And again, for those listening who maybe aren't aware, WADA is the World Anti-Doping Association or agency or something anyway.
One of those.
Yeah, the people that drug test everybody at the IPF meets. In any case, this rule prevents tested lifters or people that lift in the IPF to lift anywhere that is unaffiliated with the IPF up past a regional level. So like you could lift at, let's say, a Limerick Open or a Cork Open or a Dublin Open, but you couldn't be selected for nationals if you've also lifted at other unaffiliated meets in a 12-month period or something like that, or if you can't be selected for a 12-month period from that time, some such thing like that. But I could be paraphrasing it a little bit, but I'm giving a brief overview. It's essentially irrelevant to you if you just lift at a regional level. You can lift wherever the fuck you want. It's only really relevant for those top 10% of people that are lifting at nationals, and then the top whatever 5% that lift internationally, let's just say. But more recently, BP, who are the IPF affiliate in the UK, have put out statements that are basically coming after coaching at meets that aren't affiliated with the IPF, being in like essentially the same building as people that are either on a WADA ban or untested, and these are all banned. So this is very bizarre. And I know like the IrishPF have been much more relaxed and much more chilled at it. Well, I mean, it'd have to be, otherwise I wouldn't be bloody sitting here. I was commentating and coaching at the series like a week ago. Yeah. But I'd be sitting here, but I wouldn't be going tomorrow. But what do you think is and again, this is just your opinion I'm looking for. What do you think is the motivation for them to crack down on it so hard? Like, what's the benefit for BP to go after lifters and coaches and athletes this way, which does nothing to enhance the sport and only presents more obstacles for people training or participating?
Yeah, I think it's always, like I said at the start, part of the difference between the IrishPF and the BP is the BP is, we've been to an international now. It's very much more like the IPF international scene, where it was, music was on a bit, you go near the platform, it turns off. Like most meets in the BP don't turn the music off fully, but it's like quite quiet, it's very tame. The crowd isn't even as supportive as it is at the international compared to the IrishPF, where it's generally more music, very encouraging. So I think they're always a lot tighter connected to the IPF. So I hope it's not necessarily the committees like trying to put these obstacles in to make it more difficult to powerlift. But they're just trying to like suck up to maybe the IPF. And I don't know what they're going to get from it. I'm not in any committee or anything, so. But some people say it's to get the sport closer to the Olympics.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a terrible idea. But then I think like because the rule is here, maybe there's someone from the IPF like poking the BP, being like, "Hey, you need to enforce this rule." I don't know if anyone's doing it to the IrishPF, but I imagine like those emails are just like blocked or something.
Cormac and Jordan was like, nah, not dealing with that.
Bye now.
Well, reality is that I'm firmly of the belief, and I'd imagine many people that are on that committee are, is that I'd much rather ask for forgiveness than permission. We're just going to, because again, we're a small island at the very edge of Europe. You know what I mean? We have some really strong people, but, you know, no one's causing any harm. We all know each other quite intimately. We all work together. So I think the idea of trying to say like, well, Beck, you can't spot and load at the AB series because if you do, you disqualify yourself from national selection, which I think is moronic. And I believe everyone listening would agree with that sentiment, that doing things to help the sport grow better, and I've said it on this podcast many times, just because you are helping to develop another flavor of the same thing that you do. So like it's, you know, if the IrishPF is strawberry ice cream, AB series is banana, it's all the same shit. It's just very slightly different. So you helping this thing get better doesn't actually take away from this, because when we actually think about the average person, they don't know what the difference is. They just know their competitions. They just know they're going to a competition to see someone they know lift, or someone they're interested in seeing lift, or they're watching a live stream that somebody they know is lifting on. They don't get the difference between the competitions fundamentally.
No, and it shouldn't have to be this or that, which again, I think you've said it can be. So I'm like, there's speculation that the BP and the IPF are putting these rules in to stop people leaving and stop people going to the other federations. But if you just let people move freely, like people might compete at the series. They might compete USAPL, but then they also might compete IPF. They might do all of those things just because that then gives that individual 3 comp calendars to look at and so many competitions. And if everyone's rules are roughly the same, like it doesn't matter.
As long as the standards are high, the competitions are good crack, and the lifter has a good experience, and we're flying them. But I even think that like most lifters are going to base what competitions they lift at more to do with time of year and location as opposed to what banner it's under. I think it only becomes that when we make it that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If, I only lift in the USAPL, I only lift in BP, I only lift at Ab Series. I don't think anyone thinks that when they sign up to something.
No.
It becomes that later.
Yeah, and so you look at, like an outsider looking in, they're like, oh, what sport do you do? Rugby or athletics. Like, oh, cool, I know what that is. I've seen the Olympics. I've seen rugby games. Like, that's the throwy one, that's the runny one, that's the run into through people. Oh, I do British powerlifting. They're like, what? What is that? Oh, I do Ab Series powerlifting. Like, no, it's just powerlifting. They're like, okay, that's where you do squat, bench, deadlift. Or I do weightlifting. Oh, that's the one where you do the throw it over your head shit. Like, keep it simple so then you can get more people in the sport in general. I don't think people at the top shouldn't be fighting about, no, do our one. Well, they will if you just let them do all of them. They'll probably try all the flavors and be like, my preference is strawberry. I love a good pistachio.
Yeah, don't worry, I know what you mean. Fuck, it's all right. But let me actually ask then. My presumption would be this. Let's say any lifter could lift anywhere, which is pretty much the way it should be done. And it can be done with everything outside of the IPF. That's the way it is. It's only the IPF that enforces
that should definitely be noted.
But my question would be, if they were trying to limit people lifting elsewhere, right, in case they lose their custom or whatever, it's, well, why would people choose that competition over yours? And what can you take from that competition to make yours better? So for example, the Ab Series took the idea of doing press conferences and ceremonial weigh-ins from the UFC, right? Now, again, some people might not like that. That's fine. But maybe doing like a pre-event to the event is something that could be done. Do you know, maybe that is something to learn from. Maybe like we've seen that at international meets, they turn the music down really low because they're trying to copy the Olympics. But maybe that doesn't work for powerlifting because powerlifting is not Olympic weightlifting. No. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I don't have to concentrate so much. Like, sure, turn the music down so I can hear the ref tell me when to start benching and tell me when to press and when to rack and everything. But for squats and deadlifts, like I can see them. And they'll put their hand up or down whenever they need to.
Well, even that, actually, I've heard that about the press on the bench, right? This is actually something we do at the series that I haven't seen done in any other competition. In most competitions, they set the bench up right in the middle of the platform with the head ref behind you, and you're like basically facing the banner, right? You're lying down, you're facing the banner. At the series, they position the rack so it's right up in the edge of the platform, and the ref is literally right behind you, like sitting closer than we are now. So the back of your head, and they're like right here. So there's no way you're not going to be able to hear them. So we can now, don't get me wrong, the music's not the same. We're not listening to fucking Rammstein and fucking any other form of death metal when we're trying to like bench, but like you can still have the vibe,
Oh yeah. I'm not saying it has to be silent either. But
that would be a caveat, yeah. For sure. But that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I would presume if there's several different versions of the same product, the best thing you can do is not say, how can we stop our people going there? It's like, what can we learn from them to make our product that little bit better? And I think that's actually how everything grows. And you can basically, everyone's just like plagiarizing each other all the time. And that's a good idea. Like, I hope that that's what we see coming into 2024 then with USAPL Ireland starting. But I'll ask you your take on it in a couple of minutes. But you did touch off, incidentally, just for a minute, I know you talked about it on Instagram a little bit, the IPF and their ever moving crusade towards becoming part of the IOC. So part of the Olympic Committee. What is Beck Phillips' take on this?
It's developed only slightly since I last spoke about it, but overall, I don't think it's a net positive for powerlifting, because then powerlifting is then controlled by the IOC,
Mm-hmm.
not the IPF, which want to take it there. It's like, oh, I want to now give powerlifting to someone else. Did you realize you were doing that? Probably not. There won't. I think there will no longer be. If it goes there, you can't have the other federations. I don't think, unless it's just the IOC owns X flavor of powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think you can have other federations. But you were then telling me about weightlifting isn't weightlifting in CrossFit because it's in the Olympics. So like, it can't be weightlifting in CrossFit. They have to have the other events in.
Mm.
So then you get all those rules put into then powerlifting. I was speaking to someone in the gym just before coming over here on my last session in the UK. He was saying skateboarding has gone downhill since it went in the Olympics. Because he said all of the good athletes that he enjoys as a spectator can no longer go to the Olympics because they all smoke weed, which is a banned substance. They don't smoke it because they make it good at skateboarding. They just like it recreationally.
It's kind of part of the culture.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's that culture side of it. Then there is untested powerlifting. What happens with that?
Yeah.
Don't know. And yeah, what benefit do the IPF think that's going to have?
Yeah, that would be my question. I think it's a case where I think a lot of the lifters that are pro this approach or pro this direction maybe are naive to what happens to a sport when it enters the IOC. I don't think they realize for them, tangibly, nothing will change, but their ability to go along a pathway is going to be very greatly changed. And any of the potential excess revenue that's generated for powerlifting will never trickle down that far. In fact, by it becoming an Olympic sport, the idea of them ever being able to get like a pro card or anything like that is gone.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No. And does people realize that the Olympics is amateur? As in, you can't get paid to do it?
I don't think so.
No. So, all those Olympic athletes, they're probably sponsored. A lot of them also have jobs in the lesser known sports, but they go to the Olympics. You're not going to go, I'm not going to go to the Olympics. Like, say it gets there. It'll be the same people that go to Worlds go to the Olympics. Like, if anyone's interested in track cycling, it's the same names that go to the World Champs, the European Champs, the Olympics. It would be no different here. It would just be more competitions for the guy at the top, not more opportunity for everyone else at the bottom. And considering there are way more of us at the bottom than at the top, we should have more of a say.
Majority rules.
Apparently we don't. But
well, then let me ask, what would you like to see for the future of powerlifting? What direction do you think? What's the next logical progression then? If it's not going in the direction of the Olympics, let's say, or maybe the IPF does want to go that way, great. What else could we do? What else could improve it?
I'm not a massive ideas guy. You've got a lot of good ideas for how powerlifting can be better. They can make more money. But a bit more unity, a bit more of, I think one of the reasons the BP doesn't have the club system is because we've got a different system. We have the regionals, because powerlifting in Ireland's like ran by the IrishPF kind of all across the country. The BP just do nationals. Like the Southwest region runs the Southwest comps. The London one runs the London ones. And there's very like a huge disparity between the standard of competition. I feel like in Ireland, you're going to have a base expectancy of every competition's X good. Some are a little bit better, but that's like the venue's bigger. You can't make a building bigger. But yeah, like it's more of the unity. Like you'll have people travel from Dublin to go compete in Cork. I don't really hear about any of the other federations in Ireland. Are there any?
There's a couple others knocking around, but yeah, not to the same level. But I think that's mostly because many of the other ones aren't tested. And I think that's, or raw for that matter. So the real, there's IPO, AIPO, GPC, things like that, WRP, WF, or whatever the fuck it's called. Many of them either aren't tested or they're not raw or the standards aren't good. So most people aren't interested.
Yeah.
You've never heard of the Irish Pro?
I've seen it. I just don't know what it is.
The Irish Pro?
The Irish Pro. Yeah. I think there's a guy at the gym I work in. I think he's been there before. Yeah. But yeah, I think some kind of just make it more interesting. I don't think they need to make it. They need to make it better for athletes, but part of that will be making it better for spectators, rather than making it better for the officials. I guess.
The thing is, I think like Yeah, I know you said you're not the ideas guy. Don't worry. This was all just so I could start talking.
Oh,
So
perfect.
this is the crux of it, I think, right? Because everybody, let's just look at the Irish Powerlifting Federation. Everybody involved wants it to get better, right? They all want to see it move in a positive direction. I think the first step is deciding what that positive direction is. What are we aiming at? Because if, let's say there's a committee of 8 people, if 3 of them think it's the IOC and 5, well, let's say 5, let's say 3 think it's IOC, 3 think it's just building better domestic competitions and bigger venues with higher production, and then 2 are just kind of, no. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so this is a little bit torn. We need to have a unified vision of what that is. And you could say, well, maybe what we're going to do is we're not going to necessarily make any strides towards IOC association because we're a subsidiary of the IPF. Now, we could say we want to improve our production values to look more like an international meet. So the big, massive backdrop that wraps around and maybe like a big screen above it. Okay, so that might be something to work towards. What can we do now? We can have a bigger stage. We can prioritize having more space in our warm-up rooms for our lifters. We can look at the venues that we do use, let's say for bigger meets. Let's not worry about regionals. Let's look at national level meets, right? So Irish Nationals, Open Nationals, Junior Nationals, Masters Nationals, and then meets like the Christmas Qualifier. We're doing this in Radisson Blu Hotel, nice big conference room. What can we use that space for other than just the lifting, right? Because fundamentally, lifting's great, and this one's going to be good because it's only one day. It's only 4 flights. But like, there's only so many deadlifts you can see before you start to zone out. So what else can we give people to make it that little bit more engaging? So we have, let's just say, between squat and bench, we've 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We've about 10 minutes between bench and deadlift. What could we be doing with that dead air time? A myriad of different things. You could have as simple as your MC filling people in who is placed where in forecasted outcomes of each podium, what their opponents have to do to beat them, what your strengths are, like, let's say we're going into deadlifts and let's say hypothetically you're in third.
Yeah.
But you've the biggest deadlift. How is that going to change the face of the podium? Find out.
Exactly.
10 minutes. Go to the bathroom, get your chicken tendies and run back in here. You know what I mean? And that's just one small thing. Why not have more vendors in the hall? Now, I know SBD will actually be at this one tomorrow, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
That's brilliant. That's
cool.
That's an exact step in the right direction. Why can't each club not have an inquiry table for joining their club? Why can't Odyssey, City Gym, Abs, who the fuck else is there even? I don't know. We saw like a million different club names when we were looking at the things. Omega Strength, Union Strength, Chaos Gym, whoever it might be. Why can't all these groups have a representative or a coach to answer a few questions? Why not have, like, I mean, I could obviously say the Iron Mindset, but Andrew Rowan, Andrew Blackwood are doing a podcast. Shane Story and Lawrence King do a podcast. Why not in the interval between the AM and PM? Why can they not run a quick 30-minute podcast segment on the stage and then a bit of audience Q&A? And with those things, all you're doing is adding value to the audience that keeps them engaged with the day for longer. I don't know if you've ever been to like a convention or like a Comic-Con or something like that, but there's people speaking, there's stalls you can buy things at, there's contests, there's a million and one different things you could do. Let's say, for example, we had Alico set up a display and they have like, try the new Alico rack, try to feel the bar and the plates that the lifters are using on the platform. Or they could do like little challenge, like, you know, place do like the grip challenge thing.
I think a challenge would be quite good, because even in between the like squat, bench and deadlift doesn't have to be just in between each flight or in between each session. Someone can just quick run over like, oh cool, SPD have nice new knee sleeves. Oh, and here's a challenge, a grip challenge, or like bend this frying pan or whatever. Or like, can you deadlift 70 kilos? Like,
and that's, again, this is not to say, I actually did have a conversation with Cormac Dagg from Odyssey Strength. He's on the committee, and he was saying a couple of the limiting factors are, so for example, with this meet, because SPD are there and they're one of the sponsors, can't have other like retailers there that sell like fitness apparel. Right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Fair enough. And then the hotel don't want anyone like providing any other kind of like food or anything like that. So you couldn't have supplement brands, right? Fair enough.
Okay.
That's fine. But there's a lot of other things we can do. You know what I mean? A few talking heads, a few personalities, a little small halftime show. Doesn't matter what it is. Like I said, whether it's the lads from a podcast having the chats, man, fucking, we like, if it's the series, like we have people spitting fire and things like that, you know what I mean? We've had heavy metal bands playing on the platform. So it doesn't have to be that, but I'm saying give people more from the experience. They've paid money to come and watch. people will be willing to pay more if the experience is greater.
Yeah.
And that means there's going to be there's more excess finance made by the federation that isn't just from memberships and just from competition sign-ups. So it's not just your lifters that are paying for everything. It's the actual audience participation. This is when I said to Jay recently, I think we should do for the Ab Series, we should do a season pass. So
Yeah.
we think we talked about this, did we?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, you mentioned it to me.
I've had about 1 million conversations.
And I was like, oh yeah, another thing from another sport. It's
just literally take a wholesale. And it'll work.
I might not be an ideas man, but I'm now getting the gist. Like, you might not be an ideas man either. You're just looking at other sports and going, this
man,
over here.
Steal everything. It's the best way. So, imitation, sincerest form of flattery.
Which is weird because, like, I'll be honest, I pretty much just, for my whole degree, just finding papers, taking bits out, putting it in mind, rewording it. I'm like, yeah, I wrote that because I read it. Now I understand it a little bit. Passed my degree.
I hope nobody that like graded that listened to that bastard. He plagiarized everything.
It's too late now. I've got the piece of paper.
Amazing. But so everything I'm saying, for somebody that lifts in the IrishPF, what does all that sound like to you?
It just makes the event more fun. Even as a lifter, we've got that gap between squat and bench and deadlift. I may not be warming up, especially us in the second flight. I could go and, like, say my t-shirt breaks or something. I've got to get a new t-shirt. I didn't bring a second one. Say, like, there's a hole in my socks. Say I forget something. Having SBD there for, like, a kit really quick would be really handy. I'm sure, like, someone would nicely let me borrow theirs for a session, but, like, some people don't think about that. Or maybe if no one's brought any kit, anything like that, that's SBD covered. I really don't think there's any reason the other clubs couldn't be like, oh, here's us for coaching, because someone could get to this level without a coach.
Yeah.
I went to the first Irish Nationals without a coach. Second, I had a coach, but, like, after the first one, if there's a stall of Irish coaches.
Yeah. Well, even just, it's the invitation. Come and have a chat with us. Ask a couple of questions to coach. It's not saying you have to purchase or buy, but come and have a chat, see what we're all about, see if this resonates with what you're thinking. And then, because a lot of the time, this is one of the best things I ever learned about, like, whip business, is that when people know nothing about something they're interested in, the only thing they'll ask about is the price. How much does it cost? And if that's the first question, that means you know nothing about what we offer. So let me tell you about what we offer, and let me tell you all the different things we offer and what packages we offer that might actually suit you better. So that would be an advantage for that. But I think a lot of the time with this, the reason it hasn't happened is because no one's done it yet.
No, and if, like, even with that, if the spectators or if they manage to get someone to watch this competition who has never powerlifted before, but is clearly interested in powerlifting to an extent, or just the athletes, and then they see coaching stalls, they're like, so you coach this? They're like, yeah. I think I want to do this, but I don't really have a clue what to do. And it's like, well, here we go. So it's not just all about the athletes, like the spectators can then learn about the sport, get a coach.
Basically, what you want to try and do, so, because I've had this conversation recently, but it'll still be topical, I'd imagine, by the time this comes out, is how do we enhance the spectator experience in our sport? And the major pushback has been, do you think the athlete experience is far enough along for us to think about the spectator experience over the athlete experience? And I'm like, well, why can't these be one and the same? It exists on a bell curve. It doesn't have to be all in one side or all in the other. Like, frankly, if the lifters have an environment they can lift in where they have enough room to warm up and the bar is going to be loaded correctly and concisely and they don't have to lift from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., they're probably going to be fine. We're powerlifters. We shouldn't be that high maintenance. I know we get fussy about bars, but...
Yeah, I mean, hearing the other federations in the UK, one of the guys in the gym that I'm working in, he was like, yeah, so we had squats, like, in the morning, bench, then we went out for lunch, then we did bench, and then, like, we went out for another meal, and we had deadlifts, and I was like, all day?
So this, incidentally, is something I spoke with Jay about. That was the way powerlifting was done.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Not very long ago.
That sounds terrible. I wouldn't do it if it was all day. No.
They changed it to this, like, session-based. There's actually apparently a federation somewhere, I can't remember what they're saying, it might be in the States, where they've changed this, like, session-based, and a lot of the lifters are pushing back because they think it's too fast. It moves too fast. But, like, this is actually, have you ever heard of Moore's adoption curve? I had James Hanley on explain it to me before. And it's basically, right, the further along you get in standards, right? So the Moore's adoption curve is essentially the innovators, the early adopters, then you have a thing, it's like a chasm or a crater where, like, as people are like, so with USAPL Ireland, for example, the first event hasn't happened yet. So anyone that's on board right now was either the person to innovate it, which would probably be USAPL, and they separated from the IPF and created their own tested worldwide interlinked competitions, to the early adopters, which would be like Jagar and Ian Benson. So this breach period is now before the first competition happens to when it happens. Because before that happens, it's still only an idea. But after it happens, that's when you're going to get your early majority. Then you're going to have your late majority, and then your laggards towards the end. The people are going to have a hard time committing to this being a thing, right? That's just the same with everything. But the point is that the further along you get in a process, and the more and more something, like for example, there would have been a time where most powerlifting meets would have been ran out of something equivalent to like a barn or a shed. But then we start, or like people would have warmed up in like squat cages with bumper plates and really wobbly bars, and the only calibrated plates would be on the platform. You know, or the sessions would have ran all day, starting in the morning, ended in the evening. But as time has gone on, the minimum expectation goes up. You know what I mean? So we will probably now expect most national level meets to be in something the equivalent of a hotel rather than in a powerlifting club. You know what I mean? Because the minimum standard is now being raised to us, like in having access to hot water and clean toilets and, you know, not freezing cold warehouse in the middle of Inglis. And then that will go up again another level down the road. So it might eventually be, well, where's the media day for this? Why aren't we doing media? Why wasn't I interviewed after my squats before I went into for bench? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like for the Abs Pro, they have a bus that picks the lifters up and drops them off to the hotel. They had it for the Pro-Am as well, actually.
It was I remember one of the nationals, I think it was my first one. They interviewed the winners after the meet. Why did they start doing that?
That was Jay.
Yeah, I know, but they didn't do it last year. Or they didn't do it this year. They did it last year, I think. They didn't do it this year. Like that was a thing that is now gone, but was probably very interesting to a lot of people and gave more exposure of it because you could spread those out, say like in distributing them. It's like, oh, here's all our media about the meet on the day. A week later, here are interviews with like the female athlete winners from each weight class. Here's the interviews from all the male ones, like a week later from that. Like you're spreading out people knowing about the thing that happened.
So do you want me to be completely honest? The reason we all right, I'll say nothing. The reason we don't see these things the way we do, or the way we want to see them, like all these ideas we could be exchanging, right? And this is not anything negative on anyone on the committee or anyone that's helped out in the past or anything like that, but it is strictly run on volunteers who already work full-time jobs. This is something that this is their hobby. This is something they do for fun. This is something that they've taken on this extra responsibility for everybody else, and good for them because not everybody does. In the same, it's kind of the equivalent of like, this is why I'm saying I would never really give out about them because they're doing a job that I don't do. And I would equate it to this. It's like giving out about spotters and loaders on the platform. It's like, well, if you want to do it better, get the fuck up and do it then. Stop giving out about the people that showed up, and maybe if you can do it better, show them how it's done, right? It's fine. The problem is, though, as it's strictly volunteers, no one is incentivized to go above and beyond. It's, I tick my box, I do my job, the competition runs, it looked exactly the same as a competition from 4 years ago, the lifting was maybe a little better, the day ran a little bit smoother, but fundamentally the needle has not been pushed any real way, right? And therein lies the issue. Because it's no one's job to do it, and no one is really rewarded for doing it, and there's no incentive to do it, why would it happen?
Not only that, but I think it's only recently been talked about a lot about this whole pushing the needle and making some changes because something new's coming, and they're coming up with lots of new things that are happening. If USAPL were never like over in Ireland, they'd say that wasn't happening. I don't think anybody would care as much as they currently do about the fact that things aren't happening or things aren't changing or they're not enhancing certain pieces because it works fine. And no one's like I'm not saying that they have to do this. Like everything works fine. The comp's going to still be good. We still get plates. We still get bars. We still get the platform. We get an opportunity to lift. At no point am I like, man, this isn't good enough because I've moved over a different fucking country to do this. Like
fair.
Like it's not good in the UK, in my opinion. I've come over here because it's better. Like I'm not going to start giving out to these guys. And like you say, the volunteers, like I'm not on the committee, I'm not volunteering, so I'm not going to say, you need to do X, Y, Z. I'm just saying these things could happen. And that's the same as you. You're saying these things could happen. Even the volunteer aspect, it could be possible for the federation to do certain things to earn more money, and therefore it wouldn't be volunteers. Now they're getting paid a little bit. Maybe some of the members can go down to part-time roles outside of this, and this can be their other part-time job. And then I think when someone's paid, I think then the athletes or the spectators could maybe expect a little bit more.
So I just want to very quickly, because I know people that are perhaps on that side of it might be like listening and saying, I'm almost certain that the committee and the volunteers cannot be paid as part of the IPF.
Oh, well, who put that rule in?
I have no idea. Don't quote me for absolute certainty, but I'm like 99% sure they cannot be paid.
Okay, well, whoever put the rule in, if it's a thing, I don't think it's great, because all these things that we're saying would be a lot easier if people were paid to do this. And again, it even goes to, why would they raise more money into the federation? Well, if they start getting paid, then they can raise more money in the federation because they could get paid more. Because then there's like everyone's a bit selfish.
Well, I mean, everyone has to pay bills and put bread on the table at the end of the day.
Like no one's going to have out at you just because you started to raise money for yourself indirectly, which also gets put into the federation.
So this was, I know this was like a pushback thing when I listened to Adam and Connor's Odyssey podcast in reply to the USAPL podcast. Like, where are they going to get the money to pay volunteers? I've seen Jay Farrand pay every spotter and loader from the App Series in the last 3 App Series I've been at. And I've actually been with Ian Benson when he went through on the whiteboard how they're going to pay spotters and loaders and how much they can pay them at the first meet versus what they're assuming they can by the 4th one, depending on how the first one goes, and so on and so forth. So again, no one's saying people are going to make a full-time wage out of fucking spotting and loading. That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
But
sign me up.
But the goal is essentially people will be more willing to do the job to a higher level if there was some kind of tangible reason to do it. And this is what I'm trying to say. And I would echo your sentiment that I think the Irish Powerlifting Federation and powerlifting as it currently exists in the IPF, and I would mean that generally everywhere that I've seen it, like how we were looked after at the EPF in Western Euros, and how the Ab Series does it, and I'm sure how USAPL will do it. So any competition of that standard is run excellently. And I think you could only really know the level it's at now if you've seen where it was. And really, whenever we discuss these ideas of what we could do better, it's not that what's currently been done isn't good, but it's, don't take it as like a threat or a challenge or a criticism. Take it as these are people that are enthusiastic for the future of the sport. Because if we're talking about what could be done better, rather than crapping on what is being done now, that means we're thinking forward, not 1 foot out, like, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We're actually saying, well, what could we do now to make things better? But in saying that, speaking about USAPL Ireland, probably not going to be the name, just FYI. I think I said that to James as well, but in any case, it doesn't matter. When you heard about this, what was your initial thought as an Irish PF lifter?
I mean, I thought it was interesting. I wasn't too aware. Like, I'm glad the Irish PF put out a post being like, who's on the committee? Because I honestly wasn't. I didn't have a fucking clue. I didn't know what anybody did. I didn't know who was on the committee. Like, I knew Jay was the president. Jay's gone. I was like, oh, who's doing that now? But no, I didn't have any strong feelings. I was like, oh, another thing. Okay, cool. Like, and then I saw who it was a run by. I'm like, oh, right, no, this will be quite good. Or I know that production will be good, because with all I can do is just assume it'll be the quality of the series or the production standard that the series has because of who it's run by. And then I saw that there was 4 meets. And I'm like, well, everyone's like, oh, more meets in the calendar, like 4 more. It's not really a lot. And that's not me having out at USAPL, because why would they put out more than 4? They haven't, like you say, there's been no competitions. They have no demand right now. So they have a very little supply. That'll get filled out. Next year there'll be more, and so on. But no, my feelings were just like, I want to just see how this goes. I want to see how it affects everyone. I don't like the idea of USAPL versus IrishPF. And there isn't that, I don't think.
No.
Like, especially because the Article 14 is the only thing that may put that in.
I think that only affects a very small number of lifters, though. Like, it affects you, it affects me, it affects Andrew Blackwood, Andrew Rowe. Geez, who else can I think of? Emma McDermott. The lifters that lift to a national or above level, but anyone that's on that regional level, that you're not going to, if you're not meeting that minimum qualifying standard for nationals, you can lift wherever you want. You could do a USAPL meet in February, an AB series in August, and you could do an open in November, and there's not going to be any problems.
Yeah. In terms of getting the bands and things that people talk about, you would, in the BP, if you go from BP to USAPL, you then get banned from the BP for a year. But if you go from USAPL, like, you're not banned because you're not a member of the BP. You can then go over and it's fine.
Yeah, that's actually something we should caveat, by the way. You can only be banned by a federation if you're currently a member when you engage in the activity that would get you banned. So hypothetically, if Beck didn't buy an IrishPF membership for 2024 until March, he could compete in the USAPL in February and it'd be no problem. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying hypothetically. Hypothetically. But what I mean more so for you is because once you saw who was running it, I ran the panel podcast with the guys. I'm sure you had a little bit of a listen to it, or at least some of it.
100%.
Do you think in the long run, it could potentially mean better things, not only for the lifters, because there's more meets, more high quality meets, but I would also wonder, do you think this will help the Irish Powerlifting Federation level up a little bit as well? Because there's another big tested meat provider.
As long as there is, like, I don't know the views of the committee. I'm not going to speak on behalf of them. I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but I'm going to say as long as they do not see it as us versus them, and as long as they don't do the IPF route of you can't go over there, you're banned, like, forever, hate you, goodbye, or we're going to stick with our boring shit while they go and have fun. Like, have a think. If somebody leaves your federation for the other one, maybe contact them and say, like, why? What can we do better? Like, just everyone should come up. You guys love the rising tide, I can quote.
It's a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, I can't remember what we were talking about.
So do you think that USAPL being the new kid on the block, potentially having bigger, better meets, you think that could get the federation to say, well, let's look at how we're presenting our meets. Let's look at how we're doing things. Is there something that we could learn from the way they do things? Do you think that's what we might potentially see 2024, 2025?
I hope so.
Yeah, I actually think it will.
I hope so. It'd be foolish if they didn't. I guess there'd be no reason not to, because so what if someone says, oh, you're copying them? It's like, well, yeah, of course we are, because that looked good and we want to do that. Like, so, like, you copying other sports. Like, so even at the start, 2015, IrishPF was made. Oh, you're copying the other federations. You're making a powerlifting federation. Well, yeah, because we want to do powerlifting.
Copying IDFPA. That's RIP. That's not around anymore.
They still have that in the UK.
Idea of BPFPA, is it?
Yeah.
No one cares.
No.
But this would be the way I'd kind of look at it. Most average people that are going to get into powerlifting over the next 3 years in Ireland won't know the difference. They're just going to know powerlifting competition in my area. You know, when I signed up to the AB series, I didn't know what the difference between the AB series and the IrishPF was. I just thought it was all the one thing, you know? So when you get, now, I could also be like projecting onto people thinking they're as stupid as I am, but in any case, when you want to powerlift, you're not thinking specifically with who. You're thinking of where are my friends lifting, what's close to me, what date suits, right? So more high quality competitions being on the calendar to me is a good thing. I also think with this happening, this could potentially now, say for like the likes of SPD, A7, these big brands, they're probably going to be saying to the IPF, here, what's the story with this? You're costing us money here, because I need to be able to set up a boot at their meet and this one. And I don't want to be dealing with any of this nonsense between my sponsor, the guy we sponsor can't go lift at this massive event because you dickheads are saying there's he can't because this other guy lifts for USAPL. Say, for example, with like Sheffield or whatever, or other big events, other big tested events or whatever. What if they want to have the best guy in the USAPL lift against the best guy in the IPF?
Well, I just thought, so the sponsored athletes, this whole Section 14 shit, you've got, say, A7 sponsor the top guy in, I IPF, and then the top guy in USAPL. They probably do. Is that IPF person not then associated with A7, who is associated with the USAPL guy? So now that person has to be banned, right? The IPF guy, because he has associated with these people, which associate with those, and that person's like banned from the IPF. Then that means that person's banned. Like it would be silly because then that like A7 themselves be like, right, well, we're not sponsoring anyone in your federation now because we don't want to get people banned, or people aren't going to get sponsorships with A7 or any other brand. There's other ones. So like I would really like Section 14 to get brushed under the carpet. In general,
if it was, could you see yourself lifting at a USAPL Ireland meet or an AB series?
Like, yeah, I've wanted to do an AB series. Just like the timing of the series being quite close to the comps I want to do for the IrishPF. I was like, it's not very smart to do both of those.
Yeah, it'd be tricky.
Yeah, and then because the goal is to do international IPF stuff, it then wasn't important to do the AB series because I've seen it. I just want to experience it for no other reason. I'm not going to start going on drugs. I probably wouldn't even use wraps or the mono properly. I would just like to experience it because it looks cool.
What if there was like a tested sleeved flight?
Like in Series 14? Yeah, I mean, you wanted me to do that.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, there was something. Was there a...
You had initially put your name down. You were saying you're going to do September Open.
Oh, yeah, and then we got our invite.
To
Iceland.
Yeah, so that kind of got in the way of that.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, if that was a potential in future, would that be something that would tickle your interest?
Well, yeah, like I said, I already wanted to. It's now only become more difficult to do it. I always planned to. So yeah, like I would.
What would be the next like level up now for you coming into 2024 then, to make Euros?
Yeah, I would quite like to make Euros. That's why I'm here this weekend.
Yeah, to put up bigger numbers, bigger qualifying total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully go to Euros.
Yeah. Outlift Matthew Henry.
Yeah, just tickle his hamstring or something. Yeah. That'll go easily.
Let me ask you a couple of... I won't keep you here a whole pile longer because I know like we are literally on a countdown to us competing in the morning. I know you have like one more meal to get in, but I do have a couple other things I want to ask you. In the time you've been in powerlifting, and particularly been lifting over here and seeing the difference in culture, for you as a coach, if you had people you've got powerlifters that you coach, have you had the conversations about trying to encourage them to lift here versus UK, or are they all very firmly set in the UK?
99% firmly set in the UK. Just because why would they fly over? Like, it's powerlifting to them. It's just lifting weights. No matter how much I tell them about, they've got fire breathers, they've got live bands playing, they've got pyrotechnics in the background. They care about you. They're like, oh yeah, but it's €100 return. And then I got a hotel. It's like, yeah, okay. And I want to compete 4 times this year. I'm like, that's a bit extreme. Like, that's the thing. I compete maybe like 3 times a year. So I'd rather invest in coming over here and doing this. But yeah, I've got one athlete who has joined me quite recently called Connor Byrne. He'll enjoy this. He was messaging me. He was asking about getting his passport. He was asking about like, so how does it work over here? I'm like, so nationals is a bit different. There is a qualifying total, but there's also like, that's not the only thing. So in BP, like, it's just qualifying total. Over here, it's like qualifying total. And then above that, it's still top 7, but you need to be above the qualifying total
to even be considered. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, then there's that. So I said, the qualifying total is this. He's like, oh, okay, that's achievable. I'm like, yeah, but the 7th guy last year totaled this. And he's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, so you kind of have to be up there. He's like, right, okay. So yeah, I've got like this one guy, and I would happily take him over, coach him, handle him, no problem. Probably against him. No, he's in higher weight class, but like same meets and things.
That's pretty exciting though. I'd love for that to be a thing where like you slowly start be the UK based coach that's like filtering these lifters in over here. That'd be pretty dope. Then let me ask you another thing. You mentioned previously that you got yourself to your first nationals with your own coaching. So you're completely uncoached.
Yeah.
As somebody who coaches people, do you think that was a little bit of a silly decision?
I would not recommend it. I used to think coaches shouldn't have coaches because you can't coach yourself. How are you going to coach other people? And I think other people have that idea.
That's a shit take.
Mm-hmm. And then I realized how much effort I was putting in coaching myself and how much of a fucking mess it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have so much data from coaching yourself. You know how you feel, you know how every rep went. Like, I analyze it too much. But then you just give all that to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they just send you a program. And like, they help you with your lifts. Like, analysis wise, like, actually, this is something you're not doing, or this, you need to push here, do this. I'm like, oh, I just didn't know or didn't see that. I was just thinking of other things.
What's the biggest lesson, though, you've learned since switching from being self-coach? Like, what have you learned about yourself? What's been pointed out to you about you? Like, that you go too heavy, or you do too much volume, or what has it been?
I did way too much volume.
Okay.
Ridiculous. I now train 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I used to train 5 kind of sustainably, few aches and pains. I know over lockdown, I tried 6 days a week, squatting 3 times a week. Too much for me. Like benching 4. I did, because I also would then follow just like set programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd look at Stronger by Science.
Mm-hmm.
They did like 28 programs. I was like, I'll just run a few of those. The Russian squat routine, I ran that too many times. I did Smolov for bench. Which worked twice, didn't work the third time. But yeah, so I think just that's not training smart, and it's not how I would coach another person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can coach yourself how you would coach someone else, if you can detach yourself, have that coach you, athlete you, it could work. But think about the time and resources you put into that, and you get 0 financial gain. Whereas you could coach probably 2 people with the amount of effort you put into yourself, because everyone's a bit selfish.
Yeah.
Then not only is that financial gain, it's still the same amount of reward in seeing them progress, them grow, getting them to the next level. And then you just let someone else have the headache of coaching you.
What was the toughest thing to adapt to from being coached? Like, where did, like, you know what I mean? Like, whether it was like, oh, fuck, that's not a lot of squats I'm doing this week. Was that tough?
Yeah,
back?
It was the deadlifts. He like really pulled back my deadlifts. I'm like, I can actually sustainably deadlift 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for strongman, and it worked really well. And then I was like, yeah, look, I'm really cool. Look how much volume I can do on deadlifts. He was like, cool, yeah, nice. You don't need to, so we're not going to do that. I went, oh, but I like it. I feel I need it. He's like, no, you don't. But I'd never done so little volume. So I didn't know how to trust it. I just had to kind of go with it, see how it went. It was weird at start, but then now things are going up. I'm like, oh, cool. So I don't have to do as much work, but I can get all the gains.
Minimum effective dose.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
And that's how I would coach.
Yeah.
But not myself. I'm like, I must do more work.
So if anyone listening right now is in powerlifting specifically, and they're not currently being coached, and maybe they're making some okay progress, but it's all guesswork, what would your advice be to them?
I would at least talk to a coach. I would learn from a coach, or multiple coaches, really. Like, speak to yourself, speak to me, speak to any other coach. Just like get ideas from them, because everyone's got different ideas. I know, like, so Jay likes to run a system, like a base program, into then some individualized stuff. Adam and Connor love to do bottom-ups approach, which is similar to what I do. Like, just talk to them, get ideas, maybe implement it yourself, maybe learn about it, and then, like, I would probably recommend getting... Sorry.
Let it out, big man. You'd recommend getting a coach?
Yeah, I'd recommend getting a coach, just because they've also then got the experience as an athlete, ideally. And do your due diligence, and actually do some research about that person, about that coach. Don't just pick the one that's cheapest, because you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah, exactly.
I would agree with that sentiment, though. Like, even when I have calls with people and they're like almost firmly set, I'm like, no, still go have a conversation with some other people and make sure you make the right choice, because once we start, I want them as like firmly set and that this was the right choice. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes that initial period of time you're discovering how that other person works, it makes that go a lot smoother than if, like, you know, you're 6 weeks in and they don't know how to ask you questions, or they've actually been talking to a friend of theirs who's with another coach and getting their opinion on everything you're doing. I would have rather them have that conversation before we ever started. So I would firmly agree with that sentiment. Go, and if you aren't currently with a coach, for the love of God, consider getting a coach. What's the biggest, what would you say the biggest obstacle for people is in getting a coach?
I found it to be price. Everyone's like, oh, I can't afford that. Well, you can. If you have a full-time job, you could afford a medium price coach. You just have to not want to go out every weekend. You just maybe pull back on the takeaways. You like, sure, like currently with your lifestyle and your budget, you may not be able to afford it. But if you just change some of those things, maybe do a few extra shifts if you can. And I fully, like, I don't pay for a coach because I also say I can't afford it. However, if I change some things, I could maybe, like, I understand that. And especially students, like I've been
a broke student.
Yeah, like, and many people have. So, but it's when the broke student says, oh, I can't afford it. It's like, do you have a job? He's like, no. Like, oh, well, that'll be why you can't afford it.
I think as well, I suppose there's a couple of things. There's always going to be shades of grey here where people will say they can't afford something when they really mean, I'm not going to pay for that thing at that price because it's not worth it to me that much.
Yeah, that's it. I think when I say you can afford it, and I just said then people can't afford it, it is you'll pay for what you want. So it's entirely fine if you don't want a coach. Just don't say you want a coach.
I think as well, though, I would have very much encouraged this because I've had this conversation very recently with someone who is in a position where they work full-time job, they're doing quite well, but have just had a little baby and their housing situation's is changed a little bit. So they're in a position now where for a couple of months, they could not necessarily afford a full rate of coaching, right? And that's legitimate, right? And I recognize that. So I made a proposition to this person to say, well, you will pay me this much for this fixed period of time, then we'll go to this level. And then eventually when you're X amounts of months down the road, we'll have you here. Because the alternative for them was they had been with a coach who they were getting very frustrated with working with, and they were very adamantly wanting to make this switch, and this was their only hurdle to jump across. So I think a big element of it is there is an interpersonal element. If you actually explain your situation to other coaches, they might be able to give you a dig out, whether that's the current situation you find yourself in might be financially very difficult, or like you mentioned, students, or some people just have it pretty hard financially, but they want to coach with people. Maybe that it's for a temporary period of time. There's usually workarounds. So I think some of it is also communication, which I think some people don't take into account.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. Like coaches aren't just here like, coach me and give me money. Like that's that. Like it's only this much. You can have a conversation with us. We can be reasoned with. Like we're people. We understand things like just got a child. Children are expensive. Just moved house. Like I don't know other things.
Being an adult.
Yes, being adult things like, or even being a student. Like you can talk to us. Some coaches are like, oh, I have a student discount, or we have many services. We don't just coach. Like we could do program only. That would be a lot cheaper. Then you've got something you can then train smart. Like the 3 things of recovery being like sleep, eat, and train smart. If you sleep and you eat enough, and then here's your program to train smart. We might not be able to help you with your technique, for example, which is a very valuable piece. But yeah, like training smart. Here's a program for you, based on you. Like, here's some information I got from you. Like, that would be potentially more affordable. And then after a while, you could then go up to coaching. Because I first came to coaching because I was like, not being very well off. And believing like there are so many people that miss out on the help they need to go higher up in a sport. Like, it was mainly from rugby. All the rich kids getting ex-players or current players coaching them in certain skills like catching, passing, kicking, scrums, all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, why doesn't this guy get it? Oh, he can't afford it because he's poor. It's not his fault he's poor. Like, it's not necessarily anyone's fault that they're poor. So I was like, I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to have an affordable coaching system so I can help lots of people. And then loads of people said I was stupid. And then I became a coach and I was like, yeah, this is pretty dumb. Because the amount of effort and time you want to put into somebody, it's not that I don't want to do it for less or other coaches don't do it for less. It's that I also have bills to pay. I've only got so much time. Like, I think I'll be fine with having like 35 athletes at a certain price. That's enough money for me. That's the amount of time I can give to those 35 people to make sure they have the correct service, like a good service for them. I don't want 150 athletes. I couldn't give them a good service.
That's like a small gym, basically.
Yeah.
You'd be running. Do you know what it is? I think it's finding your entry point and what's going to work for you. Because this is always a thing when people talk about the price of coaching, just as one of the points of it. It's that if you're paying full whack for a coach, like you're in like 3 figures, 150, 200 quid, whatever it might be, right? you're a set, like you are such a demand on this person's time, because I think sometimes people don't realize how long it takes to write a program from the ground up for that person specifically versus here is a stock 6-week plan that I can just shoot to you, or you could just buy off my website. So again, it's a scale. If you want to go for the top end, because coaching, I would say, is relatively a premium service. If you're getting that really intimate, well, like you're going to show up to their competitions, you're going to be on calls with them, you're going to do them check-ins every week. You're always checking into the programs. You're spending, like, over the course of a year, hours watching them do the same tree lifts. You know, versus
it's definitely a luxury.
Yes. Versus I just want a bit of guidance for the gym. Okay, mate, here's a plan. You know what I mean? That's all you need. And I think that's fine. But I'm going to let you go now in a minute. I have like 3 more questions for you. Trust me.
Oh, no.
Yes. It has to happen. So, Beck being one of the greatest mysteries in Irish powerlifting, is it true that for the Western Euros team training, Beck Phillips boarded a plane?
Yep, from Birmingham Airport.
He flew to Dublin Airport. And from Dublin Airport, he walked to Abs Powerlifting in Finglas.
No, what, 9-10 kilometers?
How long did that take?
Took me 2 hours with my wheelie bag behind me.
And what were you doing in the session when you arrived?
I had squats and bench. I think it was, what day was it? It was a Sunday?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so I had primary squats, primary bench day, some accessories.
And am I right in saying that you got a lift back to the airport from Jay Farrant?
Very nice man.
Yes. Who you weren't going to actually take the lift of, or you weren't going to ask, and he took you then, if I'm right, or something like that. And then you were in his like Jeep or his army van Jeep where he was rallying around the corners. And then you flew home on the same day.
Yep.
Just to come over, get your few bits, do a few squats with me and the boys.
I was told that I had to go and pick up my kit for Westerns. And living in the UK, it wasn't going to get shipped out, which is fair. So I'm like, well, got to come over.
Is it also true that when you landed here yesterday, you made your girlfriend and you drag your bags from the airport to Abs Powerlifting in Finglas for your final session in the rain with your little wheelie bags?
Yeah, I also think it was raining the first time. But yeah, so my partner kindly took me to the airport last time. I flew over, walked. Jay very kindly brought me back to the airport. And then I flew back. And then, yesterday we did the same thing, but instead of just dropping me off, she also came with me. We both walked all the way down to Abs. I squatted and benched again with you.
And is it true that when we were in Iceland, despite there being a shuttle bus from the hotel we were staying in to the venue where the lifting was going on, you walked the 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. And you dragged your missus with you for that one as well?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Last thing I want to kind of touch off then. Is it true that you once ordered 5 large pizzas for 50 quid from 4-Star Pizza after Nationals?
That was this Nationals this year, yeah.
And how did that go for you?
It was pitiful performance from me. I only finished 2.
What happened to the other 3?
One was eaten by my dad. One was eaten by his fiancée at the time, now wife. And the third one I left for the hotel staff, and I hope they enjoyed it.
Just for everyone listening, to kind of dispel some of the mysteries of Beck Phillips, what's your like go-to frozen dessert, or what's your treat that you like?
So I would never recommend having this frozen or from the frozen section. It is ruined. However, I am a huge fan of lemon cheesecakes. With
what was the base? Ginger nut?
Ginger nut's preferred if it's like homemade, but like from the shops you just get the basic digestive.
And what digestive ailment do you have, Beck?
Oh yeah, I am minorly lactose intolerant.
Minorly being a baseless assumption. I've seen how much you swole up when we went to Thor's gym in Iceland. I just wanted to make sure those were all said on air so everybody knows that Beck Phillips loves walking and eats a shitload of dairy despite being incredibly lactose intolerant. Beck Phillips, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.